Okay, my friends, here we have a Sub-Zero wine cooler. It's a model 315W/S, meaning stainless, RW or RH, meaning right hand. And this was brought into the shop because the customer was complaining that the wine was too cold. And we sent out a tech, and the tech checked it out and said it had a Freon leak. And we had this running now 4 days straight. It wouldn't shut off, and the temperature was way below zero, not below zero, but below 30, well, 25 degree range. And only the left portion of the upper plate here was frosting up. The rest of this was clear. So the sensor for the thermostat is right here, attached here. And so that was the reason why it was running continuously and not shutting off. So we definitely feel there is a Freon leak in here, and we're going to see if we can find it. And we got our little trusty ultrasonic leak detector here. We're going to see if we can find the leak in this evaporator. In worst case scenario, since Sub-Zero does not make this machine anymore, it's discontinued, and so are the parts. You can't get that evaporator plate anymore. However, there are some other options here. Now, Scotsman makes a machine similar to this and uses that same evaporator plate, so you can get that evaporator from Scotsman. It's very, very expensive. And also another option is to use, we have this evaporator plate here, which is for a U-line. It's the same size, you just have to modify it a little bit and drill an extra hole here on the corners to mount it. The thermostat bolts here like the other, and then the only other option here or difference is that the suction line only has one line coming out because the cap tube runs through the suction line. It comes out and goes in there, so that's not a problem. We can still make that work. So we're going to first try to find the leak, and if the evaporator coil is leaking, if the evaporator plate is leaking, we can fix that because it's made out of aluminum and we can weld aluminum. So stand by and let's get started. Okay, we were not successful in finding any leaks with the ultrasound. So then we used the sniffer, and we can't find any leaks either. So it's either a very slow leak. What we're going to have to do now is we're going to have to put a process line, process port on the low side of the system and drain all the gas out. And then we will pressurize it with nitrogen and try finding the leak that way. So that will be our next step. Okay, we are back here with this Model 315 Sub-Zero wine cooler. We're going to temporarily put a tap line on here temporarily to remove the Freon in there, and then we can sweat in a process port. This is normally the way I do it. I mean, how else are you going to get the Freon out of the system? You could use one of these tools. I'll show you what they look like. This thing here, I don't have anything really good to say about this tool. I would imagine it works better on larger tubing, but on 1/4 inch tubing, it doesn't work for me. It leaks. And the whole purpose of using it is so you don't leak any Freon out into the air. So that's the way it is. So we're going to put this Subco tap valve on here. Okay. That out of the way so we can get it in here. There's another one here. Cable tie. Again, the reason why we're doing this is because we have supposedly have a leak in the evaporator coil. It does have a leak, but we're not able to find it yet. So I'm going to put that tap valve right here, and then I'll put my gauges on there and yep, Butterfingers. Don't give you much room to work here. It's a lot easier to do it this way than it is to pull the whole machine out from on the bottom to get a better bite on this tubing. But there should be enough room in here to sweat a process port on. Okay. Okay. We're down to 20 inches in the vacuum. Close everything off. Let's see what we got in here. I want to say a half an ounce. Not very much. It's probably why we couldn't pick up any leaks. There's no freon in it. Okay, so let's just cut this off here and we will just prepare this line. There you go. I don't have really much room to work in there, so, but we should be able to get in there with a process port. Now, let's get a torch ready here. Okay, got plenty of gas in there. We need some protection on this wiring here. Okay, so now we have pressurized the system with nitrogen. We've got almost 200 and almost 300 pounds pressure on the low side. And I apologize for the video because I've said before, I have to work with both of my hands, and right now I'm using these iView glasses, and previously I've used this EP7 video cam, and this crapped out on me after using it 6 times, and I bought a new one, an EP6. That didn't work, and now I have an EP8 coming in the mail any day now, so apologize for the video. Anyway, I'm going to use this ultrasonic I've checked the evaporator coil or the plate. Could not pick up anything in here anywhere. Normally when you have a leak you'll probably see oil, but not necessarily so. Or maybe a chip on the evaporator plate. I'm not finding that. And I'm checking everything. I took off the insulation around the tubing, and this is the heat exchanger. Not finding anything. I'm picking up something. I'm picking up something in here. Very, very slight sound. Right there. Right here. I'm picking up something in the middle of this heat exchanger. So, unless I can pinpoint it, I can't fix it. But I'm definitely picking up very, very slight sound here in this area here. Normally you want to check the blast joints with copper to aluminum. That's a normal place for them to leak. Yeah. Really, really slight. You know, checking all the areas where tubing is rubbing up against something or where there's moisture. Nothing here. Nothing on the capillary tube. As soon as I get right here, I hear something. So I'll try to put some soap bubbles on there and see if we can pinpoint this thing. Because if it's in here, then we have to change the heat exchanger. Okay, now we're going to leave this nitrogen in the system for a while and see if the pressure drops, just to confirm that we have a leak. Now we did possibly find a leak in here. I was picking something in this. I call this a heat exchanger, but according to the parts manual, it's called suction line service. So we found a part number. We're checking with the factory to see if these things are still available. It should be a simple repair, just unsweat suction line and the capillary tube and run it into a new dryer if it's available. So while we're waiting to find out if that's available, we'll just let it sit on the bench and see if it holds the pressure. In the meantime, there's probably no other way to fix this unless we make a heat exchanger ourselves. I'm not sure it's really worth putting the time in to do that, because I don't know if the customer would want to spend that much money on a machine that's, you know, discontinued. So stand by, and as soon as I figure something out, we'll get back to you. Okay, we let this sit overnight, and as you can see, the pressure was at 200 on the high side, and now it's down, almost down to what? Get my glasses here. 60 pounds. The low side is down. So we have determined and confirmed that the Freon is leaking out of this system. The problem is that these parts are no longer available. We can't get the evaporator plate. We can't get the heat exchanger. And as I showed you in the video, we were picking up traces of leak in this area of the heat exchanger. So there is only one option left to do. I'm not sure if the customer is going to want to spend the money. It's a big job, but maybe for the purpose of just showing that it could be done, we may do it anyway and then install this U-line evaporator, because the heat exchanger is already included in this plate. And I'll show you. So here's the heat exchanger. See? It's attached to the suction line right there. Now I don't know. There's a big difference between here and there. So what we're going to have to do is find the U-line wine cooler that this evaporator goes to, check the compressor. We know it's the refrigerant R134A. Check the compressor size and see if it's pretty close to what we already have in there, and then we will adapt this evaporator plate to this Sub-Zero wine cooler and see how that works. So once again, stand by. Okay, so we turned the compressor on and drained the whatever vapor was left in the system. And it pulled down to about a 29-inch vacuum, and it's slowly coming up. But we're going to let this sit for the rest of the day while we go out and run out on some calls. And then, as I said before, our only option on this is to put this U-line evaporator heat exchanger in here and see if it works. I couldn't find... I mean, U-line does make a machine this size, and I'm trying to find the part number and this horsepower on the compressors to see how close it is to this one here. Make sure that we're not going to have a problem. I don't see that we will. It's pretty much the same compartment size. All right, so we will get back to you later and let you know our progress. Okay, so here we are. I got permission from the customer to go ahead and try to adapt the U-line evaporator plate and heat exchanger in here. So we're going to take out all these slides so we can get that evaporator coil, make it easier to get out. And then take the new evaporator coil and show you what we're going to do. As you can see, here's the heat exchanger. Goes through the suction line and comes out, wraps around it, that goes into the dryer. Okay, so this is, I mean, it's going to fit in here, but I need to take those tracks out first to get it in there. And you can see it's a little bigger. I'll have to drill some holes. It's got the holes on the bottom. I might have to drill another hole in here, and maybe not. There's a hole over here, so we'll figure it out. But we're going to get started on this. He's got these little spacers here that go behind the screws. So be careful. You don't want them to go down the drain. So now we have to take off this plate that's holding the thermostat sensor on there. All right, so here is the evaporator. I'm going to cut here's the thermostat. I'm going to cut the suction line and the discharge line. We've already emptied out the system, so we shouldn't have a problem with that. Okay, I unsweat the suction line, and I also pulled out the dryer. So now we just need to pull the evaporator through and fit the new evaporator into the slots. Okay, that's disconnected. Just pull this through. All right, so there's the old evaporator. Let's see how this compares with the U-line evaporator. Yeah, it's a little wider. Holes are in a different spot, but the slots on the bottom for the feeler bulb are the same. You may have to trim this. I'm not sure if this is going to fit. Oh yeah, that fits in there. I'm just going to have to re-drill the holes, but that should work fine. Okay, let's work on getting these holes in the right spot, and then we'll mount it. Okay, so here is the new evaporator plate, and we need to get it in there and fish it through one of those holes. And in order to do that, I have to unwind this capillary tube, and then we can always rewind it once we get it through. Okay, let's see if that works. Oh, let's see, that's gonna be, let's try that hole. We'll want to put a 90-degree bend on there. Over here somewhere. I got to get an idea of where that's going to be. Okay. There's the insulation that came with it to wrap that suction line up. All right, so now we've pretty much got it positioned, so I'm going to drill some holes into the plastic wall in the back and mount these screws with these little spacers on it. Hook in the feeler bolt for the thermostat, and then we'll connect the suction line to the compressor and put a new filter dryer on here and pull a vacuum on it, and we'll see how things work. Stand by. Okay, so we have the screws on top holding the plate in. I drilled the holes for these two, but I had to remove the side racks here, not racks, the slides, in order to get my hands behind here to put this thermostat or sensor back in here. As I said before, it's the holes that are drilled in here are the same size as the old one. So now that that's mounted, we can finish putting the other screws in here on the bottom, and then we'll give this a little bit of cleanup and we'll put the slides back in. Okay, so now we've fished the suction line through and the heat exchanger. We put the insulation on here and we bent it to give us a little bit more room down here. We're going to sweat the suction line into the compressor right there, and then we have a new dryer that we're going to put in here, right here, and sweat that all in, and then we'll check it for leaks and pull a vacuum and get this baby up and running. So let's do that. Okay, so now we sweat in the suction line and sweat in a new dryer. We're going to clean this all up and bend all that and secure it with some cable ties and clean it up. But right now I just want to fill up these little holes here, these gaps, with some silicone. Okay, you got, this is the thermostat wire, and then we have these holes here. Okay. The back cover has also some insulation to help keep the heat out or keep the cold in. All right, so that's that. The next thing we're going to do is check it for leaks. Check my soldering joints here. And if all else is well, we'll pull a vacuum on it or do a sweep charge, and then mount this filter, clean it up. All right, so stand by. Okay, here we are. Now we put some Freon in there last night, let it sit overnight, it's still holding pressure. The pressure came down a little bit, about 10 pounds, because the temperature in the garage here, the shop, has dropped. So I'm going to assume that there's no leaks, so I cleaned everything up here, put some cable ties around the wires, and so there's no vibration. I put a little piece of this rubber insulation underneath the filter dryer here where the cap tube goes in, so there's no vibration there. So now the next thing to do is to finish recharging it. Now the serial tag says it takes 2.75 ounces. However, this is a different evaporator and heat exchanger, so I'm not quite sure if that's going to be the right amount. So I'm going to do it by, I'm just going to charge it and check the superheat on it, make sure that we don't have a frost back, and I'll check the temperature inside when you get it running. And I'll also check the the shelves are all working properly and they're not hitting the back plate. So we got clearance there. So we turn it on. It's now on. We'll keep an eye on the temperature. We'll let it run. We'll open up our tank and we'll start to recharge it. And then we'll watch our suction line and we'll do a superheat test on it or a frost back. Now there's a cover here that goes on the back that will also add some insulation to this, and it covers the whole compressor area and everything. So once we figure out that it's working properly, and secure that, we can button this up and call it a day. Anyway, we'll get back as soon as we confirm that everything's okay. Okay, my friends, we are finished with this machine. It's cycling on and off. It's maintaining temperature. Right now it's set at about 45 degrees. It's a little cold for a wine cooler, unless you have white wines. And so let's consider this job done. And because of the situation today with the supply chain, not being able to get parts, not being able to get machines, this is something that you could do, offer your customers if you're a tech, options, just to show you that what can be done. It's really a nice machine. There's no reason to throw it out. So we were able to salvage it. The customer's happy, and you know, we were happy that it worked out. So sometimes you have to try different things, and so we're happy with the results, and everything worked out well. So there you have it. Modified Sub-Zero wine cooler with a U-line evaporator plate and heat exchanger. Thanks for watching. See you next time.